Good afternoon. How are you on Christmas weekend? I hope you've had a chance to reconnect with your family, eat a little too much, take it easy. I've done some of those things. It's not very chilly. It's hard to believe that it's December, but there it is. So let's talk about a couple of things. Desmond Tutu, whom you've probably seen over the years, almost always smiling, even when he was leading people to unity in South Africa. He suffered all manner of prejudice himself. He wanted to be a doctor and they couldn't afford it, and there were barriers to that. Ultimately, he studied to become an Anglican minister, which is kind of interesting in a way when you think of the Brits as responsible for apartheid in South Africa and the Anglican Church being a creature of the United Kingdom, courtesy of Henry VIII. But so Tutu, we are celebrating as a hero because he suffered long and hard to bring together the people. In fact, one of his interesting speeches was about how a black child was killed by racists and a white child was killed by the same racism. And this insanity, this craziness, he insisted, could not be the order of the day. And he worked for that. And when Mandela was finally released from jail and apartheid was failing, he was put in charge of figuring out what the truth was, what had happened. So he dies at 90, and we're celebrating him as a hero. But the irony of how we celebrate people is that we don't mimic them. Here we have racism in America. We won't even talk about it on the floor of the Senate. There's something wrong there, isn't there? And there will be people from the Senate who will praise Desmond Tutu and yet still not do anything about racial justice in America. And voting rights, which were somewhat of an issue in South Africa. Well, what about voting rights right here? We even have amendments to our Constitution going back years after the Civil War. And we have those voting rights being stolen across the country in Republican states so they can win, not for any proposition they can give us except the lie that we all know about, which is that somehow or other there was fraud in the elections. Well, let's talk about the character of our citizens. I read a long time ago how a person who was trapped in a situation, held hostage, that people who were older did that better than younger, stronger persons with more stamina. And the reason offered by psychologists and others was that if you're older, you've had to adapt in order to survive and to accommodate, if you will, the slings and arrows, the tragedies, the challenges that come in every life. We don't all talk about the suffering in our families and so forth because everybody has it. But then we do offer solace to people when we can because we know what it is. So there are people talking about the trauma they have. Haven't they done enough? Are they guilty that they haven't done enough, that we still have, yes, the virus? And the answer I have for them is that you have to adapt. No one of us wants to have to be worrying about the virus, to think we have to risk ourselves. We got triple punched in our arms with vaccines and boosters, and that should take care of it. And why do I have to do something else? Because if you don't, you may get very ill. You may die. That's why. It's simple. We don't have to fight wild animals anymore. We fight tiny microscopic illnesses that can bring us down as much as a rogue elephant could run over us. How could people be so immature? And again, it's always the damn men. Tutu was a man. Could he be a model for men in America? Why not? Why shouldn't he be? But he's not. We're great at whining. We're not so good at taking on and shouldering responsibility to get things done, to make things happen. I don't believe that's true of anybody that's listening to me. I really don't. Because something else, some other view of mine would have clashed with this notion. But what is wrong with the rest of America? Punching people because they're being told to wear a mask or to prove that they've had a vaccine. I do take some amusement, although I want to wait and see what happens, that Rudy and One America in the news has been sued. And it's by those who were working on election day in Georgia. And the challenge to Rudy and company, including somebody from O&E, is that you guys lied about us, defamation, and they're suing them. Good for them, and it should work. But this is all like a small piece of the large puzzle that we need to address in the week ahead, so that when we get to January the 6th, we're not grabbing our rosary beads and praying for somebody to do something. There's an old expression, I once said it in a discussion in a church, God helps those who help themselves, and somebody explained to me that that was pre-Christian. I don't know. It certainly is sensible. And so as this is Sunday, we apparently have to help others help us by having them show the courage and doing the job. Enough about whether or not we're going to have this 2.2 trillion or 1.7 or forget it. Voting rights, racial injustice, the cloture vote. If you do a test of what's critical and essential, those are the things that we have to pay attention to. So now this evening, I'm going to not talk about terrible items on my podcast. I'm going to channel Robert Frost and read a couple of his selections. And I've left it for the end of the day because it's a reward to me to read it as well. So there are a couple of things I've picked out of my mind, and I'll try to read them faithfully as only a poet could write them when I get my opportunity later. In the meantime, I enjoy my cathedral of trees in hibernation, waiting for the moment when America will finally seize the day, honor Desmond Tutu by showing some goddamn courage. Take it easy. Bye-bye.